All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, guys, this is my first masterclass with the locker room, and I'm so excited and nervous at the same time. I've been a teacher for almost 20 years, so it's a little bit crazy that I'm nervous, but I am. All right, so this is just welcome to the class. In the interest of keeping an eye on time, I'm going to get going. I think people are going to continue to filter in, and I have some helpers that are going to help facilitate getting them in, and then also keeping an eye on the chat for us. So today we're going to jump into the secret of having difficult conversations. I hope by the end you will have a nugget or two that you can take right into the day with you. That's my goal for this session. All right, so that's my beautiful mug right there. Can you guys all see my screen? Perfect.
Yes, we can. Yep.
All right, good. This is also my first time using Canva for presentation on Zoom. So I'm having a lot of firsts right now. Yeah. All right, and the slide is not moving. See, and it worked earlier. There we go. Okay. A little bit about me. I'm just going to quickly tell you guys a little bit about me and then a little bit about the locker room, and then we'll get into the content. So a little bit about me. I've been a teacher and a coach professionally. I've been a teacher for almost 20 years, as I said, or a trainer. I've been training adults for the last 15 years. I was in the education space as a coach in the classroom and across districts all across New England. And then I moved into real estate, and I've been coaching in real estate pretty much since I started. I also work with small business owners, and my whole passion is to help people to grow a business and to ask tough questions, have really good conversations with people, and to just keep pushing towards their why, figure out what their why is and go after it. So that's what I focus on the most. I joined with the locker room this summer, which is really exciting to align my business, my vision for the real estate industry, and the locker room's vision are really in alignment. It made sense. It felt like the right thing for my business and for the locker room. So we locked arms and we're rocking and rolling. So that's a little bit about me. Also, I should add, I was trained in Fierce Conversations. This is a much bigger class that takes like days and days. So this is very intimidating to take this content and grind it down to an hour. I tried to get it to about 30 minutes of me jibber jabbing to give space for us to all share and talk with each other today. We'll see how it goes. All right, and I have to use this clicker instead of the other one. Weird. When I tested it, it worked. All right, so as I said, the locker room is where I've aligned my business. You're joining us today. This is a masterclass brought to you by the locker room. We came together as coaches just a few weeks ago, the beginning of this month, and we recrafted our mission statement. And really proud of this work and this team, this tribe of people that I'm a part of now. And I'll just let you kind of quickly look at this. I can share the slides with you later. But really our goal is to work with brokers and agents through coaching and training to provide proven systems and tools for growth, productivity, and profitability. We really want to be your partner, and I'm a growth partner with the locker room. So that's a little bit about the locker room. Are we ready to rock and roll? Are you ready to get uncomfortable?
I'm ready. And I think you're going to do awesome, Erin. So
thanks, Kristen.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so we're going to get started today. We're going to discover the secret to having difficult conversation, and you will leave the session with an actionable strategy for having them. You absolutely will. So I'm going to give you a couple different options, and hopefully one of them will feel good for you, and you can go right out into the day and implement it. My work with Fierce Conversations began in a book club 4 or 5 years ago when I first got into real estate. It was one of the first business books I read, was Fierce Conversations. And coming out of public school, it completely rocked my world. The amount of conversations this could have impacted if I had this information. And the way that I could have had an impact as a leader in the public education space. It's something I just wish I had known. So if you let this kind of work permeate into you, it will change the way that you interact with people. It will change your relationships, your business, everything. So that's a little bit about that. All right. Now for the uncomfortable part. All right. So confrontation. When I say the word confrontation, what do you hear? And you can unmute and share.
Sounds aggressive.
Say it again.
Sounds aggressive.
Sounds aggressive. Okay.
Sounds
I get
emotional.
tense. Yeah, I get
Intense.
tense. I'm like, oof, confrontation.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Chuck, you were going to say something?
Emotion.
Emotion. Yeah. Yeah. So those are all words that come to mind when we think of confrontation, right? Sort of like intense, emotion. When I say the word confrontation and we start to think of those things, does a person or a situation come to top of mind for you?
My ex-husband.
Yeah, there it is, right there. My ex-husband. Yeah, okay. So that idea of confrontation being a person, right? Or a relationship. Thinking about an ex, right? So could we also put this in the context of business? Do we have confrontation in our businesses?
Yes.
As real estate professionals? For dang sure. Yeah. We have we could potentially have a lot of confrontation in our business, right? And hopefully today we're going to come up with some ways to work through that. So keep this at the top of your mind, this idea of confrontation and the sort of struggle and maybe the who or the what. Is there a conversation that you have been a part of or haven't been a part of that needs to happen? So this is just does anybody want to sort of like, do you have something right away other than your ex-husband that's coming to mind for you?
A seller with an unreasonable asking price for their home.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think about all the time is that could be a confrontational conversation, right? To think about, well, how do I tell this seller you're not at the right listing price? How do we have this conversation so it's not a confrontation, right? Or does it have to be confrontational? Maybe it has to be confrontational. I don't know. But that's one that comes to mind for me too, Kevin, is that like price conversation. Always the price conversation or condition, right? Condition of the property. You gotta clean it up. All right.
Well, what about other agents who maybe aren't being truthful, right? Who might be aggressive agents?
Yeah. Yeah. So it could come up with our colleagues, right? And so, and sometimes, especially if we're new in the business or we're new to an area, we might not know all the players and how they play the game. And so if someone comes at you in a really confrontational way that you're not prepared to handle, you don't have any strategies for, it could be a pretty overwhelming situation. And when we're talking about representing our clients, we might not represent our clients as best we want to because we're not prepared for that, which is why it's important to dig into this kind of work, because it helps us to be better for the people we serve. And it's uncomfortable. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. So let me ask here, we're going to move into, do you choose not to have these difficult conversations with friends, family members, clients, or coworkers?
I would say I may procrastinate in having conversations. And then by then you're so worked up inside or potentially the issue so far in the past that it's difficult to recall, or, you know, or you've just stressed about it and made it even a bigger issue than what it is.
Absolutely. What I heard you say is stress, time, and telling the story in your own head. Like those are all the things for sure that are pretty common that prevent us from having these conversations or these confrontations, these difficult engagements with people. So let me go a step further with that. Thinking about what Chuck just brought to light for us, what is the cost of not having these conversations? Is there a cost?
There's an emotional cost to us for stressing about it and getting worked up about it before actually having the conversation.
Yeah, so there's an emotional cost to us, right? What about the other person that might be involved?
Well, I think there's also an opportunity for it to reoccur or repeat itself. You know, I mean, when you're like, maybe, you know, if you're a broker, or, I mean, even just being that agent, it happens again, and then you're doubly frustrated, and it's just like, it becomes toxic. It keeps building.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I hear that so there's an emotional cost to us, right? Because we're carrying it around. But then there's an emotional cost to the relationship, whether it's our environment, our culture, right? The way we're interacting with our coworkers, agents on our team, as leaders, are we having these conversations? So yeah, those are all really good points and completely valid. So thank you guys. You guys are playing all in. I appreciate it. All right. So we're going to keep going with this kind of idea of what is the cost for not having these conversations that we've decided are really uncomfortable. And I included this great graphic. This is from the Harvard Business Review. Harvard Business Review actually studies conversations and the impact that they have in our businesses all the time. You can go on there. I feel like there's at least once a month somebody publishing something. There's a lot of work going on in this space in businesses. I think sometimes we feel like this is very personal and it isn't part of business. I'm going to challenge your thinking around that and ask you to think that when we are communicating at a high level, our businesses will benefit. So when we look at this chart, which I just love, it really tells me, and hopefully you'll see it too, you're not alone. We're not alone in this idea of being uncomfortable. So this particular study was around giving feedback. And they interviewed 616 managers with a poll. And the percentage who say they're uncomfortable communicating with employees, communicating in general, was 69%. This is our leaders, right? Managers, 69% of them are uncomfortable just communicating. Okay, 37% in giving direct feedback or criticism about the performance they might respond badly to. That's that uncomfortable conversation, right? This is kind of where we live right now in this conversation. Demonstrating vulnerability, 20%, recognizing employee achievements, 20%, delivering the company line in a genuine way. So our vision, our mission, what we're doing together, our why as a company, giving clear directions, 19%, crediting others with having good ideas, 16%, speaking face-to-face rather than by email, 16%. What is this? Does anybody want to share what they're thinking about as you're looking at this, or what's coming to your mind?
This is astonishing to me.
Right?
Leaders, like 60% of the people taken in this poll were uncomfortable crediting others with having good ideas.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to do. Like, that's all I want to do all day.
Right. Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. And could we like take out the word managers and plug in CEOs, parents, agents on my team, brokers in my office, myself, right? Like, could like interchange that word? And would some of this still hold true for most of us in this group? Probably. Yeah. And so this to me says like, we have a ton of work to do in this space around getting comfortable having conversations. And specifically, this is around feedback, but really it's about communication, right? We all have work to do. You're not alone. If, I always think whenever I have this conversation with people that they think that I'm attacking them in a way, or they're really personalizing it, because we all personalize this because we all have work to do in this area. So that's the piece that I just wanted to hit home with this chart. You can use this, like really look at it a little bit more. How would this impact something in your business? If you were to take just one of these and work at it consistently, would it have a positive impact on your brokerage, on your team, for your business, in your family life? It kind of all spills together. Does anybody else have anything else they want to share or comment on around this chart or graph, I guess?
I guess if everyone's uncomfortable anyway, you might as well just get down to it, right? 70% of people are uncomfortable just talking.
Zoom high five. Yes, exactly. If we're all uncomfortable, let's just call a spade and be uncomfortable together. For sure. I love that, Kevin. Thank you. All right. So this idea here, okay, we're all uncomfortable. What's the value in these confrontational or fierce conversations? They're often the key to ending gridlock. So that's really like, why even do this? Like, we're all uncomfortable. None of us want to do it. Why? Because it could be the key, right? It's the key to creating motion and movement and moving forward and whatever goal we're trying to get to, whether it's, I need you to come to something on time, right? I need you, Mr. Seller, to really think about the price of your home in the market today and how your home is showing up. And the goal that you told me when we signed this listing agreement was that you wanted to sell your house. So right now we're at a standstill, right? How do we have that conversation? So these conversations are often the key to ending that gridlock, that standstill that we feel we're in. And the price for not having these conversations is generally very high. I grabbed this quote from Susan Scott during my training in Fierce Conversations. I don't know if you could find it anywhere specific, so I'm not going to tell you where to go to get it, but it was Susan Scott that said it. I wrote it down in my notebook. So not probably a perfect quote from a book, but it really spoke to me that this idea that we're ending that gridlock and that the price for not having them is really, really high. All right. So hopefully at this point, I've convinced you we're all uncomfortable and we need to have these conversations. But if I haven't, I'm going to tell you, we're going to dig in a little bit more. I'll talk to you about it in a different way. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Because I'm flying right now because I'm blah, blah, blah.
I will add that when I find myself not wanting to have a difficult conversation, if I really look inward, it's more about me.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to protect myself, or I feel too proud, or I'm emotional. It's more about me than it is about the other person or the situation. So when I'm able to pause and really think about it more rationally, I realize, okay, that's not fair because I'm just projecting myself onto the other person. And it's often the cost to me is the learning opportunity, or the opportunity to realize, okay, I'm wrong, or it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a minute to realize, like, okay, it's not about me. Like, what's the bigger picture? What's the goal?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. All those points are really embody why we shy away from these things, right? Because it's about us. Like, we don't have a plan, right? We need to, or we tell ourselves, I know what you're thinking, right? Like, how many times are you like, you're not a mind reader. That's not at all what I was thinking when you do have these conversations, right? Like, well, why didn't you bring this to me sooner? Well, because I just figured you would react in this way. Well, why did you assume I would react that way? Right. Like, and we notice that comes up more and more. So yeah, thank you for that comment. I appreciate it.
It's so funny to me because just like Jennifer said, like, if I'm ever afraid of having a fierce conversation, which is, it's really rare, because I just am not afraid of it. But if I ever am, it's always because I'm afraid of the result. But really the result is what I'm going for, having the fierce conversation anyway. So it's like, what am I so afraid of? You just have to do it, right? But it's that fear of the unknown. Like, what if the result that I get isn't what I'm hoping for?
Right. It's that, that fear of the unknown, because we can't control how the other person reacts or their thoughts about whatever it is that we're bringing to them, right? The situation. Yeah. Cool. All right. Okay. So I have this is just a great story that actually comes from another one of my colleagues in Fierce Conversations. So who here's a gardener? Does anybody garden? Yeah, I'm not so much a gardener, but this is such a great story to illustrate the power of those missing conversations. So what do we know about weeds in gardens? We all know something about that.
Got to get those weeds out.
You got to get those weeds out, right? What happens when the weeds start to go? You got to get them out. How do you need to get them out, Reed? Can you say more about that? What's important about removing the weeds?
Well, the fact that I've kept my plants alive for the last 6 months is like a godsend to me. So I'm not having my weeds deal with my financial investment, that's for sure. But no, it's just pulling them out, and getting the whole weed out of there, because it's going to take over the whole plant, and it's kind of like a bad apple. It takes over the whole crowd situation. So
yeah. Yeah. So, and when you say the whole plant, like I'm picturing like the roots, right? Like we got to get it all the way down to the root.
Yep.
And what's important about that? Like getting it out by the roots.
So that way it doesn't grow back.
Doesn't grow back. Right. So, that's how I think about these conversations. We know we didn't do it right when it keeps coming back. And that's back to Chuck's point earlier when he was saying like, it sort of keeps repeating itself, right? If we're not really getting at the heart of it, right? Or getting all the way into the problem of whatever it is. In our businesses, so we know in our garden, the cost is losing your plants, right? Or your yield if you're trying to grow something, fruits or vegetables or something. What is the cost in your business if you don't get down to the root?
Could be inefficiency.
Yeah.
Inefficiency, sure.
Setting the wrong standard.
Setting the wrong standard. Okay, so setting a standard that's different than what you have for your business.
Mm-hmm. From the company's vision and environment and culture. And
absolutely.
It smothers growth, and growth just meaning moving forward, because weeds choke out the other plants. They grow more rapidly. And so, yeah, it puts a lid on your opportunity as an organization.
Yeah. When I think about this as an organization too, does it always have to be a person, or could it be a process or a system? It could be, right? It could be a missing system or process, or it could be one that's, in Kevin's word, inefficient.
Or a bad habit.
Or a bad habit, for sure. Yeah. A system that's missing, right? Like I think about my own business when I was running my team, and there were things that when I didn't have a system for them, there were lots of extra confrontations, right? Or discomfort that I felt because I didn't know how to handle the situation until I built a system. So sometimes the thing that we're all feeling is that standard, and we're not meeting the standard because we need a system, right? So just another way to think about it. All right. So this poor lady with her broken arm obviously has let the weeds take over. Maybe she was afraid to ask for help because of her broken arm to weed her garden. Either way, there's a conversation she did not have. So All right. So we're going to jump right into now how not to have a difficult conversation. So don't do these things. I'm sure all of us have done them though. So, okay. So here's the first one. So how's it going? Have any of you ever done that one before? Where does the conversation go?
Good.
What?
Good.
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 Good. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. The traffic getting in here this morning was crazy. I missed my opportunity, right? Like now, how do I pull it back? Actually, what I wanted to talk about was, right? Like it just gets super awkward and you've lost control of the conversation completely. The sandwich. We all know the sandwich, right? Like this was actually, I think, taught in some leadership things at one point. We were taught to do this sort of like 2 compliments and criticism. I can remember my early years of teaching that was on my review. This is
I
like
was taught that too. Yeah. You go in nice, then you go for the kill, then you exit nicely.
And what happens to your comment or the really critical thing that we needed to talk about in that setting? It's completely gone in the sandwich, right? Like you take a bite of the sandwich, it's gone. It's just like mishmashed out of there. Writing the script. This goes back to sort of like Jennifer's comment of like, I know how you're going to react. So I'm just, talking over the person or not giving them space to respond or crafting the conversation in a way that there isn't any room for them to have an authentic response, right? So I'm writing a script. I know how you're going to react. I planned this conversation. This is how it's going to go. And you almost have no other alternative but to react that way or to maybe walk away from me because I haven't given you space. This one is not my style, but I do know that there are people out here. Yeah, Kristen's shaking her head. No, like this isn't how I do it, but I know there are people who do. Pillowy soft. So the message gets lost in all the fluff. This is sort of a version of the sandwich, but it's not so neatly packaged. It's like so much more nice, or the way that you're saying it, like, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to hurt your feelings. This is how I'm going to say this. This is something I thought maybe you might think about, right? Like very roundabout. Could I misconstrue the issue at hand if you're bringing it to me in that way? For sure, right? Like, and then I walk away like, oh, that was a great conversation. She gave me some stuff to talk about or to think about. I'm going to maybe work on it, maybe not.
Come on. It's like if you're going to let someone go, like if you're the CEO and you have to fire someone because they take a nap all day and you're pillowy soft about it and you're like, it's just, I really want you to just be able to take your naps all day. And then the employee leaves and they're like, wow, my boss is so supportive of my nap time schedule, right?
Yeah.
You didn't even get the point.
Right. Like you walked away like feeling good and like, I don't have any work to do really because they are honoring everything about me. Right. Like, okay, cool.
And to tag on and to piggyback on Kristen's comment, by doing it that way, you're setting them up for failure at their next venture, their next company.
Sure.
You're not really helping them.
Yeah. And as leaders, right. And we can, I love Brene Brown's definition of a leader is any person that wants to help someone grow. Right. So, and that could be kids, that could be adults, that could be people in leadership positions. It could be your coworker, right? We all are leaders in our life. And so if we're not having these honest conversations, if it's the whole, like, it's not you, it's me conversation, like it's not helpful and it doesn't help us to grow and it doesn't help us as leaders and it doesn't help the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. So, yeah, that one, like, it's not my style. This next one, I am guilty of. All right. So the dump truck, AKA the total download. Don't do this. It hurts, man. It feels good to the person doing all the downloading, right? Like this is the, I've been holding this in for weeks. I've been trying to hint to you that every time you come to team meeting, it's irritating, but now I'm going to lose my mind, right? And I'm going to go on about everything you do that irritates me and I, in my opinion, think needs fixing. Is that helpful? Have any of you ever experienced that? Yeah. I feel like this is a mom classic, right? Like we kind of corner the market on this one. Maybe just a parent classic. I don't know, because I'm not a dad, so I don't know.
Or even spouse, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's like, well, why didn't you tell me that before? You could have just given me one little clue.
That's where my brain was going, was like the spouse. I'm like, yep, keep it all in. It's gonna be a long weekend.
Yeah.
Hey, Erin, didn't it come from fierce conversations about little by little and then all at once?
Yeah, so it's a Ernest Hemingway quote, actually.
Okay.
And it's how did you become bankrupt? Gradually, then suddenly.
There we
So
go.
it's one of the tenets of fierce conversations, this idea of gradually, then suddenly, right? So our relationships or our businesses, our bankruptcy, our financial situation, anything, it's really gradual. It feels sudden in the moment that it's happening, right? In the moment you're having that total download where someone's letting you go from their company or their life, or you're looking at your bank statement and you're like, I have no money. Well, when you really look back at it, it's gradual, right? It's like, oh, I went to Target every day for the last year and spent $100. There's all my money, right? Like, yeah, whoopsie. So yeah, thank you, Chuck. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the dump truck is kind of like that. You're like, oh, I'm going to choose my battles. I'm going to choose my battles. Oh, that's not worth a confrontation, or my schedule's too busy today to have that conversation. And it keeps building, and then you just lose it, and you're like, I'm out of here.
Well, yeah. And I think the other thing too, is if we think about that, our fear of damaging the relationship prevented all those conversations that should have been happening all along. Sorry, I can't talk. And we wait. And now at that point, when we're in the total download, like dump truck mode, where's our relationship? If it's a work situation, we're probably like, I'm done. I don't care if you walk out of here today, right? I'm telling you everything. And I'm going to tell you to you 10 times. And if you don't want to be here at the end of it, cool. Because I've already in my mind checked you out. Right. So like, that's the piece where it can be really damaging. And you could have had this littler conversation a long time ago that you could build something good on, right? And maintain, your standard, or built a system together or something like that. So I know we've all experienced these. We've probably all done all of them. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add to this idea of how not to have a difficult conversation? No, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Oh, we're doing pretty good. 12:36. All right.
I would say also, does anybody ever laugh when they're having a difficult conversation? Like,
yes.
And then you come across as a jerk, right? Like,
oh,
I'm not trying to giggle. It's not funny. Like, it isn't funny. I'm not laughing at you. I just am so uncomfortable that I laugh. Did that ever happen? Like, sometimes I have to train myself. Like, I'm not going to laugh this time. Like,
well, it's funny, when I was going through my fierce conversations certification training, it's one of the things they said to me, you smile too much. I said, oh, okay. And I was like, I think it's from all my years of being in front of small children, right? And being a teacher and needing to build rapport immediately. It's also helped me as a salesperson, right? To have a smile. And I've worked my way through lots of fierce conversations with a smile on my face. And I feel that it's me caring, right? But it was interesting. It was one of the things that was commented by a lot of my facilitators, was that I smile a lot. So, Kristen, I'm right there with you with the, like, maybe having an inappropriate or perceived inappropriate behavior during a confrontational conversation or difficult conversation. So, yeah. Did you unmute, Chuck?
I did. I was just thinking, I was having flashbacks of a past supervisor that would smile through confrontation like that. Yeah, there was tone in the voice.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so coupled with what really was a fakeish smile, like it just came across very condescending and like you're being talked down to, and it's like, you're gonna get this, right?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is so unhealthy here,
Yeah.
I just
And
totally had a flashback.
yeah. And it's something for sure that I've had to start to pay attention to as I train adults, right? And I have these conversations with adults, and how do I make sure that my tone is appropriate and my face is appropriate? And, if I am having an inappropriate facial response, that I'm owning it and honoring that, hey, it might seem a little weird that I'm smiling. I just my face, right? Like, it's not that I'm being condescending, right? So, but recognizing that's an important thing to know about yourself, right? I just see, do I have, oh yeah. I'm looking in the chat. So, all right. If you have to go, Brianna, go ahead. All right, we're going to go to the next one. All right, so now this is the secret. Okay, so this is what you've all been waiting for, the secret to how to have a difficult conversation. So I grabbed a couple of models. Like I said earlier, there are lots of thought leaders in this space. Brene Brown talks a lot about it in this book, Daring Greatly. If you haven't read it, read it. It's so good. Simon Sinek talks about it in The Infinite Game and Leaders Eat Last. Obviously, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, and Harvard Business Review. If you just want to like dip your pinky toe in to start to look at some of this stuff, Mel Robbins also does some stuff with this as well. So there's a lot of people really digging in and doing research around this confrontational piece of conversation. So this is just one part of a larger workshop, really. But I decided to pull two models to share with you today because another class that we offer here at Masterclass is on the DISC assessment. And honoring that we're not all in the same place on the DISC assessment, having two different models that you could choose from, either for yourself, right? What is your model and how you're going to get there? And then also who you're talking to, and recognizing where they're coming from so that you can have a strategy for both situations and different types of people that you are working with or living with. Okay, so this is the effective confrontation model by Simon Sinek. He says it has three, but it's really four. He doesn't number 4, but I think to make it an easy acronym, he calls it FBI. So feelings, behavior, impact. So the first step, you're going to state specifically how you feel. The second one, you're going to state specifically the behavior that caused the feeling. So this prevents that dump truck that I love so much. The impact is the third thing. So I'm going to state the impact if the behavior continues. And then the fourth, which he just says, but he doesn't number, is you're going to listen. And you may have to repeat the statement that you craft a couple of times until you elicit the response from your person that you're having the conversation with. So let me give you an example of that. So I wrote one down and I'm gonna just, okay. So if by being specific, you're gonna choose one instance, you're not gonna be like, hey, every time you come late to team meeting, which is all the time. Well, I was here last Thursday on time. Yeah, that's right. But all the other times, right? It sort of derails everything right away. So you wanna lead in with, when you came to the meeting late on Friday, it made me feel disconnected from you. My concern is that if you continue to show up late, the disconnection will grow to the point where I will stop trusting you. Yeah, and boom, right?
I
And
packed a punch. Yeah.
then I'm gonna listen. And what could a response be to something like that?
I imagine just like a slew of excuses coming at you, like my
Yeah.
dog ran away, or
Yeah.
like my kids were whatever, you know.
Yep. And so then that's where you would repeat the statement, right? My concern is that you were late on Friday. I'm feeling disconnected from you. And my concern is that you being late is going to continue to make us feel disconnected. And I'm not going to trust you, right? I'm going to just keep. So the really important part of this one is to write it, craft it, follow these steps, and know what you're going to say, because you may have to repeat it a couple times to get beyond the excuses of whatever it is, right? That we need to have the conversation about.
I love how specific you got with it, because when you pulled the slide up, I was thinking like, okay, from a broker standpoint, right? If you have an agent who's not producing and you want to have that difficult conversation with them, if I was to say, I feel like you're not meeting your full potential, there's so much there that you can pull from. It's not specific enough. So I like it that you got so specific with what exactly makes you feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll hear, I have another example for my next one that is the longer model that's specific from a conversation from my team. So I will share that one in a minute. Does anybody else have any thoughts or, things that are coming to mind? Any bells going off with this?
What I like about this model, there's frustration, or there's a feeling in the moment, yet you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on the behavior and what the impact is going to be. And yet to me, what that signals or creates a space for is what's our opportunity here? We're in a space to create a solution rather than getting down to this ultimate impact. You're not focusing on the frustration today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think, the most, you're like getting right to the meat of all of this, the why. Why are we doing this? Because we're in relationship with people in our businesses and in our lives for a reason. And this whole idea of gradually then suddenly, if I'm ignoring the fact that you're coming in late, what if there's something going on that I need to know and you're not communicating? What if I'm thinking about retention and that agent's about to leave, right? Or that my brokerage, and I've invested a lot of time and money and whatever into that agent, right? And I'm noticing this is happening. And then in a month, they tell me they're leaving. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have had that conversation when I noticed they were coming to meetings late, right? And in the last couple of weeks, they've continued to not come to meetings, and I stopped trusting them. So now I don't even care that they're leaving. I just want them to leave, even though we had a wonderful relationship for a really long time. And I valued that person being a part of my brokerage, right? So I think that's where, when we start to think about the cost of these conversations, our feelings fuel the way we behave. And if I feel like I can't trust you, am I going to, as a broker, stop including you in things? Am I going to not like, oh, they're not here, whatever, we're going to, right? And then that completely continues to grow that space in the relationship. So thank you, Chuck, for bringing that up. So this is a very like get in there, high D kind of model. If this model scares the pants off of you, the next model might be for you. So we'll go to the next one. And the cool thing with all these models is they really are all the same. They have the elements are either smushed together or they're, mishmashed. Another thing I'll say about Simon Sinek's is you cannot skip any of the steps. All three have to be there. They've tested it and researched it. If you do two, you will not have the outcome that you would if you did all three. So if the sharing how you feel about it is the one that we generally want to not do, we generally want to skip the how do I feel about it. And we just want to say, you need to come to meetings on time, right? Like, or we want to avoid the cost, right? That might be the other one that we might shy away from. The cost is me not trusting you. That's a big cost, and that's a very heavy hit in a conversation, right? If you were on the receiving end of that, how would you feel?
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, I
You
gotta
weren't
pay
even talking to
attention.
me and I didn't like it when you said
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I was thinking the right thing. I started sweating there for a second.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Whew. Right. So don't
Mhm.
skip any of the steps. So that's really important. All right. So this one, this is a, more sort of thorough, takes 2 slides. Susan Scott, more high C, high S personality, but has been coaching business owners for years, CEOs. She knows her stuff too. So this is the fierce confrontation model. Again, this would take me like half a day to train you guys in. This is the down and dirty stuff of it. So hopefully you can take something from it. But in preparation for the conversation, so you see that for both of them, we're going to prepare ahead of time for both of these, whether it's Simon Sinek's model or Susan Scott's model. Oh, both SS. That's interesting. I just noticed that.
Oh.
I just noticed that. All right. Okay. Preparation. 1, we're going to name the issue. 2, we're going to select a specific example that illustrates the behavior or situation that you want to change. 3, describe your emotions around the issue. Feels a little familiar to the last one, right? 4, we're going to clarify why this is important. What is at stake to gain or lose? 5, identify your contribution to the problem. Mel Robbins has this one as well. What do you own? What piece do you own in it? Indicate your wish to resolve the issue and invite your partner to respond. And I'm just going to take you through the model and then I'll share my example with you. Interaction. 8, inquire into your partner's views. Ask questions, get curious, dig for full understanding. So this is the part where you want to really, you're not putting any more of yourself into the conversation. You're receiving information from the other party at this point. Resolution. I love this part. 9, what was learned? What did we learn here? How can we move forward from here? These are the questions that we ask, right? 10, make an arrangement to hold each other able. So what did we learn? How can we move forward? And we're gonna make a plan for whatever it is that we decided is going to happen, right? And how is that going to happen? And are we going to meet? Are we going to create something? What are we going to do together? All right, I'm going to go back. Okay, so I went really quick through that. Does anybody have any questions on that? I'm going to give you my specific example.
I'm waiting for it. I'm like, okay, do it.
It's kind of painful, but it's when I was writing it this morning, I was like, oh, I'm going to use this one instead. All right. So, okay. This is from, as I said, when I was running my team, and this was to my partner at the time. I need to talk to you about your lack of follow-up with our clients. Last week, I was on vacation and received an email from Sarah that stated she had not heard back from you. I am frustrated that this is happening. This is important because how we communicate to our clients is part of our value proposition, and we will lose repeat and referral business. And if it continues, I will lose trust in you. I have contributed by not working with you to create a system for follow-up. I wish to resolve this for the benefit of our clients and our relationship. I would like to understand your perspective. Please talk with me about this. So that's how that went. And it was an ongoing conversation for, I think we had this conversation maybe 3 times. I did a few things that were on the do not list before I got here. I suggest just get here first. Just do this first. Just don't do I did the like sandwich and the right. It didn't work. So ultimately we had a conversation I will share with you that identified that we needed a system because his communication style was not the same as mine. We needed to create a standard for our team, one that we could agree on, because it was Erin's standard and my partner's standard, and they weren't the same. So we realized that through this, right? Through this interaction, it was not, I'll tell you, it was not a comfortable conversation. I can remember we were sitting, looking at a beautiful lake, having this awful conversation, but it was really important because it moved our business forward. So one of the things was that our communication styles were not the same. My expectation of him was different than his expectation of himself. And the resolution was that we needed a system. We needed a system and a process that we could use, and then we could train the agents on our team to use, so that when we communicated our standard of communication to our clients, it was consistent across the team. It didn't matter what agent on our team, whether you were dealing with me as a team leader or somebody else, you were going to receive the same experience, right? It sounds really simple, but this was actually very difficult because it was not comfortable for him to have this level of follow-up and communication. So that's where the DISC personality assessment also comes in too, right? So recognizing where you are. But if we could create a system that met his personality, right? As long as he had the system and he was like, I'm going to execute on this system, it was fine. Without the system, it was me nagging him to like, did you follow up? Did you follow up? Right? Why are people calling me telling me that they haven't heard from you? We can't do this. Right? Okay. Any questions about that?
Erin, did you say that this second model, Susan's model, is more for the C and S personality? Is that the receiver or us?
Either way.
Okay.
Either way. Yeah. So that's where I think that I'm more like high D, high I, like I'll just drive in and have the conversation. But without a plan, it's going to turn into a hot mess, right? It's going to be me like, blah, 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 blah. Fix it. Let's go, so that's where I need the system in the process so that I'm really being thoughtful of, oh, there's other people that want to interact and maybe we need to work on this together. It's not just the Erin show. Susan's model, I am, even though I'm high I, high D, I like this model because it's so thoughtful about where other people could be coming in. And it really speaks to, I value our relationship so much that I'm willing to have this super uncomfortable conversation so that we can grow together as business partners, as people in a company together, and, as friends, whatever it is. That to me is where, it's a little bit different. So you can use them both ways. So if you think you're going to be talking, if the other one's uncomfortable for you in terms of like, this feels really direct, it's because it is. This one's a little bit more steps to get to the same place, right? I think. I
guess my fear, not really a fear, I don't know why I said that. Like in the first part of this slide, I could see if you're with a fast-paced person, like a quick thinker, by the time you're to the third or fourth kind of point, they could already be wanting to interject and not hearing you out.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's a really good point. There is a model within this model where you can actually write it out and you can send it ahead of time, or you can ask them to read it, prior to the meeting. So, really your statement, or you can read the statement to them, right? So you're going to read it to them. If they're going to check out, you could do both. So all of those are completely part of the model. So yeah, and I've done this with teams actually. So I've facilitated this exact model in groups, and we have had team members write the things out and send them to each other ahead of time, or that's what they spend the first part of the meeting working on, is crafting their statement to share with each other around when you're talking about like brokerages and teams, it could be budgets, it could be everybody pulling their own weight, right? Like if you have partners that own a business together, who's responsible for what's our standard, who's training? Like I've used this in so many different ways for coaching conversations too. So yeah, those are great points.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Let's say you are a high D, high I personality, and you like this Susan Scott model. Can you eliminate some of these steps, or do you have to do all of them?
So Susan would say you have to do, Susan would say you have to do all of them.
Okay.
And I think that if you let the conversation unfold and you are following the model, all the steps will happen. So yeah, I would say, but if you look at the first, I really feel that these steps are all encompassed in Simon Sinek's model. The biggest one that I don't see is this identifying your contribution to the problem, which I think is really valuable too. Like Mel Robbins has that as the first thing in her model, and her model is sort of in between the two, but it's a little confusing. So I just chose these two for today, just to give people something to take action on today. That piece I think I love that because it gets you outside of this sort of blame piece. Right.
And I love that too. Like it takes two, like I'm to blame as well.
Yeah.
Yep, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about the last model of you came late to the meeting, what would potentially be my part in owning that is that I noticed that this has been happening, right? And I didn't bring it to you sooner. Right. So that might be something that I own. And I didn't even ask you why. That could be right. And that's where those excuses come in of, well, like, I didn't let you know, but my mom had surgery and she's been staying with me and I've been having to take care of her every morning. Well, I had no idea. Do we not have a relationship where you can let me know about that stuff? And that's maybe a problem with my culture that I've created in my business, right? So those pieces of ownership, I think, are really important. And for some people, you may not be able to get through all these steps, to Chuck's point, right? So maybe it's both, right? Maybe you have the first one that quick, and then you plan to meet again, which I've also done with teams. If you're doing this with a larger group, if you're addressing something culturally in your brokerage, then you might start with the first one or scheduled to do this one again, right? Like later to have a larger group meeting. So yeah. Anybody thinking like, hey, does anybody feel conflict with with this stuff? Like, this is crazy.
I think it's a good roadmap either way. Like you said, you just got to pick who you're talking to and which model to go with, right? Because the back that I have nots, I can check off all those ones. I might as well try these ones,
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I think, in this, so I think in Simon Sinek's model, it's sort of implied that I'm having a conversation with you, which means I care about you and our relationship, where Susan Scott is very explicit about it, right? This model is saying, this is important. And what's to gain is a better communication in our relationship, right? Or movement in our team, productivity, right? I own some of it. I really want to solve this problem. I'm not just dumping this on you and I'm going to walk away. Like, I want to work with you to find a solution. And then I'm inviting you to share your thoughts about this with me. So this one it's a little bit more, I think, explicit in that I want to keep this relationship, I'm having this conversation because I want to keep the relationship. Where I think in Simon Sinek's, it's implied, right? Like, I'm bothering to talk to you about this because I care about us, right? And our business or our relationship, whatever it is. So, woo, it's 102. All right. So that was actually pretty good with the number of slides. Like, all right. So I just wanted to give you a minute to take a moment and identify any conversations that are missing from your business and your personal life before you get off today. Please jot them down. Is there a person that you need to talk up with in your business, in your brokerage, in your life? Is there a conversation that you are avoiding having that you can take one of these models and you can start to craft a plan for? And I can't move the slide. There we go. All right. Thank you. This is my contact information. There's going to be a demo right after this, I think on this same Zoom channel. And check out our Facebook group, Broker Talk, for more masterclasses. Does anybody have any other questions or comments for me?
I was going to say, this was great. Thank you so much for all the insight. Yep.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
awesome.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It's like my favorite thing to talk about, uncomfortable conversations.
Because they're uncomfortable.
They're uncomfortable. Yeah. Well, I grew up with a dad who's a doctor. We talked about a lot of weird stuff at the table growing up. And so I think I have a leg up on some of it. But other than that, it's been really impactful in my own business life and personal life to do this work. So
Yeah,
all
very
right.
cool.
Let me see if I can stop the recording.